It was February 2019 in Denver, Colorado. It was the kind of cold that makes your fingers hurt and your nose sting. The wind howled outside like it was angry. That afternoon, our heater stopped working. No matter how many times I tried to turn it back on, it would not start. My two kids, Cashin, who was 9, and Kalina, who was 6, were sitting on the couch wrapped in every blanket we owned. Their teeth were chattering. Kalina's little hands were cold even under the blanket. Our apartment was small, and without heat, it felt like a giant freezer. I knew we could not stay there. It was too dangerous. I did not have time to wait for someone to fix the heater. So I helped Cashin and Kalina put on their thick coats, scarves, and gloves. I told them it would be a little adventure. They tried to be brave. I buckled them into the car and drove to my parents' house. Their house was big and warm. It had 4 bedrooms, 2 guest rooms, and even a finished basement. There was more than enough space. I was sure they would let us stay. When I rang the doorbell, my mom opened the door. At first she smiled, but when she saw our bags and the kids behind me, her smile disappeared. "You can't stay here," she said in a flat, cold voice. I blinked. "The heater broke. It's freezing at our place," I explained. "We just need to stay for a night or 2. "We need the room for Bennett," she said. "Bennett is my brother Darian's son. He is 11 years old. My parents treat him like he is the most special child in the world. He always gets the biggest gifts and the most attention. Once, he ripped Kalina's sketchbook in half and called her boring. No one punished him. But it's freezing outside," I said softly. Kalina was holding my hand tightly. I could feel her shaking. My dad stepped into the hallway. He did not look upset or worried. "Bennett needs comfort," he said. "Your kids will be fine in the car for one night." Those words felt like a slap. Fine in the car? It was below freezing outside. I looked at their warm house behind them. I thought about the empty guest rooms. I thought about the soft beds. But I could see in their faces that they had already made their choice. My parents had always made me feel less important than my brother. But this hurt in a new way. I wanted to shout at them. I wanted to tell them that I was not weak. That I was not failing. For the past 5 years, I had been working harder than anyone knew. But I said nothing. I turned around, walked back to the car, and closed the doors quietly. Cashin looked at me. "Are we not staying?" he asked. "Not tonight," I said gently. That night, we parked near a 24-hour diner because it had lights and warmth nearby. I kept the car running as long as I could to give us heat, but I had to save gas. The kids fell asleep under blankets. I stayed awake, staring at the dark sky, thinking. The next morning, I woke up to Kalina coughing in the back seat. It broke my heart. I took my last $20 and bought them pancakes and hot chocolate inside the diner. They smiled as they ate, trying to make me feel better. While they ate, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Darian. "Don't make a big deal about last night. Bennett needs stability." Stability. Bennett had 3 gaming consoles, private tennis lessons, and a bedroom full of toys he never even opened. My children had just slept in a freezing car. Darian and my parents did not know the truth about me. For 5 years, I had been working 2 jobs. During the day, I worked at a financial advisory company. At night, after the kids were asleep, I studied online. I learned about business, investing, and how companies grow. I saved every extra dollar. Little by little, I bought shares in the company where I worked. Then I invested in other smart places. Last month, I quietly bought most of the shares in a medium-sized bank. That meant I was now the majority shareholder. I had control. By noon that same day, my phone rang. It was my mom. Her voice sounded tight and worried. "Arden, you need to come over right now. It's an emergency." When I drove up to their house, my dad was pacing outside. Darian stood on the porch, pale and stressed. Bennett peeked through the curtains like he was watching a movie. Mom rushed toward me. "It's your father's retirement account," she said. "The bank froze it." Dad's voice shook. "They said we can't access our money. They said they need to speak to the new majority shareholder." I stayed calm. "Oh," I asked. "And who is that?" Darian slowly lowered his phone. Dad looked straight at me. "It's you," he whispered. I nodded. "Yes, it's me." They looked shocked. "I'm the new majority shareholder," I said. "And unlike you, I don't leave people I care about out in the cold." Mom started talking quickly about family, love, and misunderstandings. Dad looked smaller than I had ever seen him. "I will unfreeze your accounts," I said finally. "But only if you apologize to Cashin and Kalina in front of the whole family." They did not answer right away, but they knew they needed me. 2 days later, my cousin Celestine held her yearly family dinner. It It was always a fancy event. Everyone dressed nicely. People talked about their vacations and their success. I usually skipped it. This time I said yes. When we walked into the grand dining room, conversations slowed. My parents were sitting at the long table next to Darian. They smiled like nothing had happened. Bennett sat proudly, showing off a brand new smartwatch that looked very expensive. "Arden, you came," Celestine said, giving me a hug. She seemed happy but nervous. Some relatives whispered when they saw me. I ignored them and sat down with Cashin and Kalina beside me. Inside my purse was a small velvet folder. It held official documents proving I owned 60% of the company Darian's business depended on. Halfway through dinner, Darian stood up. He raised his glass with a confident smile. "I want to thank my parents for their support," he said. "My business is growing strong. And Bennett is top of his class." People clapped politely. Then Celestine looked at me. "Arden, what about you? Still working at that little place?" A few cousins giggled. I leaned forward calmly. "Yes," I said. "That little place is part of a company I now own 60% of." The giggles stopped. I took the velvet folder out and placed it on the table. I opened it slowly so everyone could see the papers. Darian's smile faded. "What is this?" he asked. "This," I said clearly, "is proof that I have full control of the company your business depends on for supplies and delivery." The room went silent. "And that means," I continued, "I decide whether your business keeps running." My mom's hand froze in the air. My dad looked down at the table. Bennett stopped playing with his watch. "That's impossible," Darian said. "I thought I had control." "You asked Dad to invest his retirement money into your company," I said. "But you opened it to outside investors. I have been buying shares for years." Gasps spread around the table. My mother whispered, "Arden, what are you saying?" I looked directly at Darian. "I'm saying," I said slowly, "that you work for me now." No one laughed. No one spoke. The only sound was the ticking clock on the wall. For the first time in a long time, I did not feel small. I did not feel ignored. I felt strong. But more than anything, I felt proud. Not because I had power, but because I had built something on my own. I had worked hard. I had protected my children. And now, everyone at that table finally saw me for who I truly was. Some of our relatives leaned forward in their chairs like they were watching a big show at a theater. Their eyes were wide. They were ready for more drama. They thought the exciting part was over. But I was not finished yet. What I had just said was only the first crack in the perfect picture they had made about Darian. For years, everyone believed he was smart, strong, and always right. They treated him like a hero. But they never saw how he treated me and my children. They never cared enough to ask. And I still had one more surprise. This surprise was bigger than anything I had said before. It would change everything in our family. It would make them remember every freezing night they made Cashin and Kalina sleep in the car while they stayed warm inside the house. It would make them understand that I was not someone they could ignore anymore. Darian's face became hard and tight. His jaw moved like he was grinding his teeth. "Do you think this is a game, Claire?" he said in an angry voice. "You can't just—" "Oh, but I can," I said calmly. I leaned back in my chair. I made sure my voice was clear and strong so everyone could hear me. And I already have. Slowly, I opened my purse and pulled out a thin white envelope. It looked simple, but it held something very powerful. Inside was an official paper my lawyer had prepared the day before. The paper said that Darian was no longer the CEO of the company. The change would start right away. "This is illegal," Darian shouted. He stood up so fast that his chair scraped loudly across the floor. The sound made some people jump. But when I looked at him, I saw something different in his eyes. Fear. He knew the truth. Years ago, he had sold some of his extra shares in the company to people he did not even know. He did not read the small words in the contract. He thought he was too smart to make a mistake. He believed no one would ever be clever enough to take control away from him. But he was wrong. Dad suddenly slammed his hand down on the table. The plates and forks shook. "Claire, stop this right now," he yelled. "You are tearing this family apart." I looked straight at him. I did not look down. I did not blink. "No, Dad," I said. "I am making sure my children never have to beg for a warm place to sleep again. You made your choice when you cared more about Bennett's comfort than their safety." The room became filled with whispers. The relatives leaned closer to each other. Their voices moved down the long table like a wave. "She owns the company? He's been working for her this whole time." Even Bennett's proud smile disappeared. He looked confused and worried. I turned back to Darian for the last part. "Starting tomorrow," I said, I am moving the company headquarters to another state. You can either work under my rules, or you can clean out your desk. Darian opened his mouth, but no words came out. He looked shocked, like someone had taken all the air away from him. My mom looked very nervous. Her eyes moved back and forth between us. Arden, she said softly, maybe we should talk about this in private. No, I answered. I stood up and picked up my bag. I held out my hands to Cashin and Kalina. We are done here. Everyone has heard enough. As we walked toward the door, I could feel every single person watching us. But this time they were not looking at me with pity. They were not ignoring me like I was invisible. They were looking at me with something new. Maybe fear. Maybe respect. Outside, the winter air was sharp and cold. My breath made little white clouds in front of my face. But inside my chest, I felt warm and light. Cashin slipped his small hand into mine. Kalina wrapped her arms around my arm and stayed close. For the first time in many years, I knew exactly where we stood in this family story. We were not the ones left out in the cold anymore. But I was still not finished. There was one final step in my plan, and it would make sure they never dared to look down on me or my children again. The next morning, I woke up early. The sun was just coming up, and the sky was soft pink and orange. I felt calm. I felt ready. It was not enough for Darian to lose his CEO title. It was not enough for my parents to feel embarrassed at dinner. I wanted this moment to stay in their memory forever. I wanted them to remember the day everything changed. So I booked the largest conference hall in Denver. It was big enough to hold hundreds of people. I made sure that every shareholder, every employee, and every investor received an invitation. And yes, I also saved seats in the front row for my parents, Darian and Bennett. When the day came, the hall was full. People were talking and waiting. There was a low buzzing sound of many voices together. Bennett sat in the front row next to Darian. He kept touching his smartwatch again and again, like it could protect him. My parents sat beside them, stiff and quiet. But no one could protect them from what was about to happen. When I walked onto the stage, the room slowly became silent. The bright lights shone down on me, but I did not feel afraid. "Good morning," I said. My voice was steady and clear. "Most of you know me as Arden Whitlock, one of the smaller shareholders of this company. But what you do not know is that I am now the majority owner." People began to whisper in surprise. "And starting today," I continued, "we are going to make important changes." Behind me, a huge screen lit up. It showed a simple chart. The company's profits had doubled in the past 2 years. People leaned forward to see better. Then the next slide appeared. It showed the words Darian Whitlock, CEO, with a bold red line crossing his name out. Under it were new words in large letters. New CEO, Arden Whitlock. There was a moment of silence. Then the applause started. It grew louder and louder. Some people even stood up. I lifted my hand to ask for quiet. "Before we move forward," I said, "I think you should understand how we got here." The room became silent again. Years ago, Darian asked our father for a large investment. That money came from my parents' retirement savings. He promised to grow it and protect it. But instead, he sold important shares without fully understanding the rules. He believed no one would ever claim them. He believed no one would try. I paused. He was wrong. Darian jumped to his feet. "You are humiliating me in front of the entire company," he shouted. I did not move. "No, Darian," I said calmly. "You humiliated yourself when you tried to take what was not yours. You humiliated yourself when you decided my children were not worth a warm bed on a freezing night. And you humiliated this family when you chose greed over love." The hall was completely quiet. The only sound was the clicking of cameras because I had invited the local press. They were taking pictures and writing notes. Then I showed the final slide. It was a picture of Cashin and Kalina smiling brightly in front of our new home. It was a large 5-bedroom house that I had bought with cash the month before. The sun was shining in the picture, and they looked happy and safe. "From now on," I said softly, "this company will invest in people who work hard, not people who believe they deserve everything without caring about others. And my children will grow up knowing that no one decides their worth but themselves." For a second, my voice shook just a little. I wanted them to see that I was strong, but also human. The applause that followed was louder than before. Many shareholders stood up. Employees clapped and smiled. Some people even wiped tears from their eyes. My parents sat still and pale. Darian looked like he could not believe what had happened. Bennett stared down at the floor. His proud look was gone. I stepped down from the stage. Cashin and Kalina ran toward me. I bent down and lifted them both into my arms. They laughed and hugged me tight. At that moment, I felt lighter than I had in years. This was not just about getting revenge. It was about fairness. It was about protecting my children. It was about standing up when no one else would. As we walked out of the hall together, I knew one thing for sure. They would never forget this day. They would never forget the day the daughter they thought was weak became the one holding all the power. But for me, it was about more than power. It was about finding my voice again. It was about making sure my children would never feel small or unwanted again.